Geronimo, perhaps the most famous Native American name in the Wild West. Born in 1829, he would become an Apache leader, a medicine man, and a famous warrior. He would also end up a prisoner of war.
He was famous all over the world in his own lifetime, and as his fame grew, so did the stories about him. Here is just a few of the most famous. Are they myth or are they true?
Let's dig into this.
The story goes like this. There are two versions of this story. Version 1 says Geronimo himself yelled his name as he jumped from the Medicine Bluff to escape the U.S. cavalry. And version 2 says World War II paratroopers yelled Geronimo when they jumped from their planes because of a movie.
Geronimo was a skilled leader and shaman, or medicine man, of the Chiricahua Apache tribe. He was also an experienced warrior, able to conduct raids and hunts quickly and quite effectively. And he never jumped off a cliff to evade capture, because he reportedly didn't need to. He was a brilliant strategist and evaded everyone, including scouts from his own tribe, for many years. So this version is definitely a myth.
But the second version is true. Yelling Geronimo actually did become popular among paratroopers during World War II. A group getting ready to jump decided they needed to know if a member lost consciousness during their descent. They were betting he would. The paratrooper had reportedly watched a movie about Geronimo the night before the jump and decided this was the code they would use. He jumped and he yelled Geronimo. The rest, as they say, is history.
The story goes like this. While Geronimo and the warriors from his tribe were away on a trading trip, Mexican soldiers killed his wife and children. This started Geronimo's war of revenge.
On March 5th, 1851, Geronimo and a number of the men from his tribe were in the Mexican town of Llanos trading. When they returned, they found the Mexican army under Colonel Jose Carrasco had murdered many men and women and children from the tribe, including Geronimo's wife, mother, and 3 young children. They had taken the tribe's livestock and weapons and destroyed anything they didn't take with them.
Geronimo swore revenge for the massacre and began raiding Mexican settlements and killing Mexican soldiers. His hatred grew and he attacked and killed Mexican civilians too. His reputation as a rebel grew and would eventually bring him into a confrontation with the U.S. Army.
The story goes like this. Geronimo spent the last 20 years of his life as a prisoner of war, in a cell or chained, after he was captured by the U.S. cavalry.
Geronimo's Chiricahua Apache tribe had avoided the U.S. cavalry from the time they escaped the San Carlos Reservation in Arizona in 1884. They continued their raids on Mexican and American settlements, killing a number of civilians in the process, until early 1886. By September of that year, they were tired of running and hoped to negotiate a better reservation location if they surrendered.
Geronimo was the last Indian leader to surrender to the U.S. military on September 4th, 1886. He and his followers were sentenced to manual labor in Florida before being moved to Mount Vernon Barracks in Alabama, where they were reunited with their families. After nearly one-fourth of the tribe died from tuberculosis, they were relocated to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where Geronimo would spend the rest of his life.
He was in his 60s when he reached Fort Sill and was not the young warrior anymore. While he was still a prisoner of war, his days of escape and raiding were firmly behind him, and he was becoming quite famous by this time. The authorities at Fort Sill allowed Geronimo freedom, to visit the nearby town to sell his handmade bows, arrows, and walking sticks, and sign autographs for the tourists.
He was also allowed to travel with a soldier guard with Pawnee Bill's Wild West shows and appear in the 1901 Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, and the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904. He even participated in Theodore Roosevelt's inauguration parade in 1905, riding a pony down Pennsylvania Avenue. He was still, technically, a prisoner of war.
The story goes like this. Geronimo was taken as a prisoner of war to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and died trying to escape inhumane treatment.
While we certainly cannot say Geronimo's life at Fort Sill was easy, the truth of the matter is he was given a surprising amount of freedom. He liked to go to the nearby town of Lawton, Oklahoma, to enjoy his celebrity status selling his handmade crafts and signing autographs, as we've mentioned. He would reportedly use the money he made to buy whiskey.
On a rainy night in February of 1909, he was thrown from, or fell off, his horse on his way back home. He lay in a cold, wet field for hours before someone found him. By that time, he was already quite ill. He was taken to the Fort Sill Indian Hospital, but developed pneumonia and died February 17, 1909, at the age of 79. Geronimo was buried at the Beef Creek Apache Cemetery at Fort Sill.
The story goes like this. Like most Geronimo stories, there are two versions of Geronimo's missing body. The first says Geronimo was moved in the middle of the night in 1914, and his grave has been empty since that time. The second version says Geronimo's body or skull were stolen by a group of students, including the father and grandfather of a U.S. president, and is in the vault of the secret society at an Ivy League school.
The first reported theft of Geronimo's grave actually happened in 1914, but only grave goods were taken. Tribe members refilled the grave and intentionally spread a rumor that the body had been moved to prevent anyone else from disturbing the grave. In 1928, after tribe members confirmed the exact location of the then unmarked grave, the Army covered it with concrete, and the marker that stands at Geronimo's grave was built.
The second story refers to 6 Yale students and members of the Skull and Bone Society who were stationed as Army's volunteers at Fort Sill in 1918. Prescott Bush, father of President George H.W. Bush and grandfather of President George W. Bush, is one of the men often named, along with Henry Mullen, Winter Meade, and Ellery James, among others.
The group reportedly broke through an iron tomb door one night and dug up the grave inside, removing a skull and 2 femur bones. They quickly closed the grave and took the bones back to their room to clean them with carbolic acid. From there, the bones made their way to the Skull and Bones vault, where they remain to this day.
The problem with this version of the story begins with the grave itself. Geronimo's grave didn't have an iron door. He was buried in the Apache Cemetery about 3 miles from the fort with a wood headstone. There was a grave with an iron door, but it was not Geronimo or even another Apache. It was the grave of Kicking Bird, a member of the Kiowa tribe, and some men named in the reports over the years were not at Fort Sill at the time.
There have been multiple unsuccessful lawsuits filed to try and get the bones of Geronimo from the Skull and Bones and from the Fort Sill burial site, but there is no proof Geronimo has ever left his grave.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video.
Hey, here's another DragonDen video you might like.
And if you like this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button.
And you can hit the notification bell if you'd like to know when our videos come out.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.